Tension, based on real events. South of Carlsbad, New Mexico, there's a forgotten town that was literally erased from the maps in the 90s. People say most residents vanished in a single night. Only one survivor remained. Mrs. Elva Crane, blind and alone. After dark, she never steps outside and says the town remembers who laughs. A guy told me this after he and his friends drove out there, cocky and sure the myths were for tourists. They found the old school windows punched out. The basement hallway smelled like leaves and wet ash. One friend said he saw a woman with very long hair by the nurse's office and wandered after her. The others, used to his antics, didn't notice he'd gone. The air began to breathe, short in, long wheeze out. The dead fluorescents flickered and froze at 3:03. From a far classroom, something rocked and tapped its fingers on the floor, counting steady. When they caught up, he was facing the corner, smiling with someone else's smile. His fingers clicked the linoleum. 3, pause, 3. A voice, female, but charred at the edges, came out of his mouth. I am the one they burned. My hair crawls the prairie for those who laugh at my name. If you hear my whisper, don't turn, or the hair will close your throat. Dry leaves crept across the floor, though the windows were sealed, moving against the draft and braiding themselves into a plate. One kid turned anyway, and screamed, like straps were cinched across his chest. They hauled their friend into the night. He went limp, woke up, remembered nothing. But the small things started. His radio stuck on AM 1230, counting 1, 2, 3. Mirrors bloomed with long dark threads like hair in water. Leaves hissed at the threshold and settled into a ring. Every few nights at 3:03 came 3 polite knocks, and a voice at the door spoke the name of the one who'd laughed the loudest. The blind woman says, "It's the ash woman from the basement, burned for witchcraft. Her hair walks the flats and listens for ridicule." If you ever find that school, don't check your GPS, don't say her name, cover your mirrors and keep walking. If the leaves move against the wind, don't look down. If you hear her whisper behind you, count to 13 and do not turn. The building remembers everyone who breaks the rule and returns them one by one. Next scary story. I was 11 the summer my parents sent me to my great-uncle Louis in tiny bog hollow outside Millinocket, Maine. 3 houses, nothing but woods and bog. He was a strange man, red-eyed from sleepless nights. His first rule was simple: never go into the cellar. Even if you hear me calling, do not open the hatch. At night, I heard his whisper through the walls, and once I woke to find him standing in my doorway, quietly crying into the dark hall. The worst night, thuds came from beneath the floor. Boom, 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 like a palm hitting the underside of the hatch. The house filled with the wet smell of rot and pond water. Then I heard a voice. "Hey, open up. It's me." In my voice exactly, my phrasing, my shortness of breath. I was sitting in bed while I called from the cellar. The iron ring on the hatch twitched, the board screeched, and a seam opened, spilling cold air. Out of the dark slid a child's hand. Small, pale, with my birthmark on the knuckle and a fresh scratch on the wrist I'd made that morning. More fingers settled along the edge. Longer, not mine. I fell. "Open up." I broke my leg. My voice pleaded, followed by my mother's, "Honey!" The hall door slammed by itself. Something rustled behind the dresser, and from the crack along the baseboard oozed something black and slick. No eyes, no face. Only a breathing mouth that stretched too wide. I pressed into the corner, palms over my ears, muttering anything I knew. Prayers, counting rhymes, just to drown the scraping on the boards and the raspy whisper drawing closer. "Open, open, open." The hatch behind me swung wide. Something heavy dragged across the floor, and then silence hit, sudden as a switch. In the morning, my uncle sat in his chair. The hatch was cross-braced and bolted shut. He said only, "You didn't go down there, but now it knows your face." Since then, every evening I hear footsteps under the floor and a thin laugh in my own voice, like someone practicing. Black half-moons, charred fingertip marks, bloom on the hatch's underside. My uncle's dog wouldn't enter the house. I grew up and left, but I still avoid basements. If the clock suddenly hangs at 3:03 and the air tastes like wet iron, I don't touch the hatch and don't answer, even when the person at the door is calling in my voice. Next scary story. This was in the 90s. My friend's grandfather, Earl Carter, kept a horse near the Blue Ridge outside Floyd, Virginia. One warm May afternoon, he rode out to a cut-over field to hunt morels. The grass smelled sweet. Thrushes were singing. When a fiddle struck up nearby, bright voices weaving through it. He eased into a clearing and stared. A long table under a white cloth, shining plates, looked exactly like a wedding. Smiling folks took his reins. "Come sit, eat with us. We'll walk your horse to the shade." He sat at the edge while they poured drinks and heaped plates, but out of the corner of his eye, he saw his mare lathered white, fighting the tie ring though she stood in cool shadow. Above the table the glasses clinked without reflections, and the guests' shadows lagged behind their hands, as if the reel was out of sync. The fiddle sped up, then played backward. One lady's hand rested palm up, and a braid of hair circled her wrist. When the sun grazed the trees, palms pressed candies into Earl's pockets. "Long road home, take a few." He yanked free, grabbed the reins, and broke into a gallop. Behind him the laughter kept time, half a beat ahead of his hooves. At his porch he reached into his pocket and went cold. The candies were dung, wet toadstools, and the dry whisper of leaves from an empty lining. A pixie plate had been woven into his mare's mane, the kind the hollow folk leave, her breath steaming in hot air. He wheeled back to the clearing, but found nothing. No table, no music, only a ring of pressed grass and the smell of wet ash. That night the barn latch clicked 3 times, the wall clock sat at 3:03, and someone gave a polite triple knock at the door. In the morning, hoof prints crossed the lot against the fall of shadow, and a sticky ring like a stemless glass marked the windowsill. Old-timers in Floyd said, "On May nights the hollow folk feast in the draws. Don't eat their food and don't take their gifts. They turn to trash and mold by morning." Earl hung an iron horseshoe over the door and kept wide of that field. Some warm evenings, when lilac rides the wind, a fiddle drifts out of the trees and shadows move out of time across the grass. That's when the Carters drop the shades, slip an iron nail into a pocket and stay inside, because the hollow folk remember their guests, and they love to return what they served. Thanks for watching until the next scary stories.